Okay, so today we're going to be improving our kid space in the basement using the OREI 4K60 HDMI Multiviewer and Switcher. It's a long name, but basically this box will take in up to 4 inputs at 4K60 and allow you to multi-view them or switch between them on the output. And it does all that for under 200 bucks. So let's take a look at how we're going to use it in this kid space to make it a little bit easier for people to use, whether for kids ministry or when we have other groups down here in the middle of the week. So let's take a look at what it takes to set this thing up and what we'll use it for. All right, so this is our quote unquote tech booth down here in this space. Really old iMac and an old analog soundboard, and then it runs that HDMI over to that TV over there. It's a mess, but it works. It does exactly what we need it to do, which is basically play ProPresenter. But we also do childcare down here for special events. We have some different groups that meet down here during the week. And sometimes people just want to be able to play videos from YouTube or from Netflix or from their own computer or whatever. And inevitably what ends up happening when we want to do that is people come back here and they unplug the HDMI from that iMac that's going into that TV. We obviously don't want people to do that because it's super, super annoying. So, I mean, I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. It would be great if instead of that, we could actually just have a few different inputs here or even an extra HDMI port or something hanging around. The problem is I don't really want something like an ATEM down here because, I mean, it's more expensive for one, and for two, like it just does more than what we actually need it to do down in this space, and we really just don't want people getting confused. Plus, I mean, if I'm being honest, OREI sent me this box to test out and show you guys, so, you know, use what you got, right? Now, it's worth mentioning that they do have a cheaper version of this box that is just the switcher and doesn't have the multi-viewer as part of it. That's not the one we have today, so we're gonna be looking at this and while we can use that specifically here. But if you don't need the multi-viewer, the one with just the switcher might be a great option for you. So let's take a look at this thing and how you set it up. Okay, so it is about as simple as it looks, honestly. You have 4 different HDMI inputs and then an HDMI output. You also get a left and right RCA output that you can send into your soundboard, so that way as you switch between your different sources, you can still get audio going where it needs to go. They also have a place for an IR extender and then also just like a COM port here in case you need to do other special things. They also have an optical audio out. I don't imagine that's going to be super useful in most people's churches, but if you were to use something like this in your house, that would be handy. If we flip over to the front, you just get kind of a status screen here with your different inputs, as well as some on-screen controls here. Now it does come with a remote, and I'll kind of show you guys that in a second. So realistically, I don't see people using this all that often because it gives you less control than the remote. But really all we have to do now is kind of plug some things in and get going here. Okay, so that's the computer into HDMI 1, and then we have this Amazon Fire Stick right here, and we're gonna go ahead and plug that into HDMI 2. Now this is gonna be just a mess right now, but you know, you can obviously put this wherever you need to, under your desk, on top of your desk, whatever it is you need to do. And then finally, this is the HDMI cable that actually runs to our TV, so we'll go ahead and plug that into the output. And ideally, I would run the RCA audio out of this as well. I just don't happen to have that cable with me, so you know, you're gonna have to kind of imagine that. Okay, so now that we have all of that plugged in, let's go ahead and take a look at this remote. So along the top there, you can actually select which input it is you want to show on there. You can cycle between them, and then you also have this multi-viewer button, so you can actually do a split screen option. You also have a few audio controls as well as like some menu things here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the TV and see what we're seeing here. Awesome. So we can see here that our computer is showing up on the TV. And then if I take my remote and I push it over there, great, now we're actually looking at the Amazon Fire Stick. So I can swap between them super easily here. So like I said before, it's not just a switcher, it is also a multi-viewer. So as we push the multi-view button on the remote, we can jump between the different multi-view modes. And this is probably the one that most people would care about, right? It's a grid 2x2, and each one of these is going to be its own 1080p 60 hertz display, which honestly is pretty incredible when you think about it. So down here in our kid space, realistically, day to day, we're not going to be using this multi-view feature, right? Because it's on our program screen, right? It's not like you're using this to switch between the inputs like you would on an ATEM or a live production switcher. However, say we're having some sort of youth lock-in or something, and it's like, hey, the game's on, and we want to be able to play video games, or we just want to have a big Madden tournament or Is that what the kids are playing these days? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Whatever video game tournament on the screen and have a bunch of kids play all at once, split screen. Well, there you go. Now all of a sudden we can have 4 different video games going on at once, or 3 in the game, or whatever it is you want to see up there. It gives you a lot of flexibility to actually choose what's showing up on your screen. And yes, again, obviously you could do this with an ATEM, but the difference here is you get a 2x2 borderless grid to show these displays, and each section is its own 1080p display. If you use something like an ATEM Mini, realistically in that situation, you're only getting a 1080p output, and you don't get to control what the multi-view looks like, which means you don't get a nice 2x2 grid to actually play around with. So it's really not suited to the same situation here. Yeah, it's more suited to your live production, but it is not suited to having the multi-view actually something that you are displaying to the people. Now, realistically, we're not going to be using the multi-viewer all that often in this space, but it's cool to know that we can. More often than not, we're going to be using it just as the basic switcher. So on a Sunday morning, it'll be, showing input number 1, which is just our computer here so that we can show Pro Presenter. During childcare nights, we might be showing a movie, so it's like, great, hop to input 2, and we can use that Fire Stick to show whatever movie or content it is that we want to stream in here. And then, yeah, there's a small group meeting in here and somebody wants to share from their laptop. Great, that's input number 3, which is our extra HDMI that's hanging out here. We've just created a really simple system so that anybody can come in here and show whatever content they need to without having to, call the production team to be like, hey, how does this thing work? It's gonna be super basic, puts really big labels on those buttons, and now all of a sudden you're off to the races. So this isn't for everybody. This isn't for every space. One other way that I could see using something like this in our flow is in our tech booth upstairs. We have a couple different monitors up there, one that shows our lighting computer, and then another one that shows the multi-view from our switcher up there. Now, we don't switch things all that often. It's more, again, of something that's just switching between events with a little bit more live situation to it than this. But we don't need to see that multi-view all the time. But it's nice to be able to check on it when we need to. So if we wanted to just have one monitor in the booth, well, we could have our lighting computer and our switcher actually plugged into this guy right here, and then have the multi-view pulled up so that way we can see both at the same time. This would allow us to only have one monitor in our booth instead of 2, and still be able to make the changes that we need to when we need to make them, since we're not using either of those computers really all that often. And we could do something else, again, where we plug some other device into there when it's something where you really need to monitor it more than you need to actively use it. But you're still given the option to use whatever input you want in full screen whenever you need to. So honestly, this box right here is really flexible in what it affords you. And it's really, it's got some size to it, but it's nothing super crazy. Like, this thing will fit in any tech booth or mounted under your tech booth. It's gonna be super easy to set up in your church context for sure. Again, it's not for everybody. It has a very specific use case. And again, if you really just want the switching, get the cheaper option. But if the multi-view is cool to you for hosting a game night or being able to monitor multiple things all at once, this guy's kind of hard to beat. There will be links to order this down in the description of this video. I'll get a small kickback from anything that you buy down there. So make sure you use those. It doesn't cost you anything extra. If this is interesting to you, go check it out. Until next time.